everyone, and welcome to Office Leadership Series. Thank you for joining us today. These days, we are not just sharing the roof at our homes with people of different generations, but also at office spaces with multiple generations. Today, at any given point in time, workplaces find almost 5 generations of workforce trying to coexist in the same office environment. These 5 generations, widely categorized as traditionalists, baby boomers, Generation X, millennials, and Gen Z, come with their respective working style, temperaments, priorities, and expectations of a workplace. The challenge for organizations now is to create workspaces that accommodate all the demands in the most harmonious and efficient way. And this is what we'll discuss in today's webinar in more detail. Today's webinar will be moderated by Mr. Amit Ramani, founder and CEO of Awfis. He is also the vice chairman and strategic advisor of Ncube India, which is a leading group providing design and real estate consulting services in Asia. Amit comes with an extensive experience in areas of architecture, design management, strategic planning, workplace, and business process improvement. Joining us today at the webinar is a panel of 3 eminent leaders. I'd like to introduce our first guest speaker, Aparna Piramal Raje. Aparna is a thought leader on business, design, and workplaces. She is also a well-known columnist, writer, motivational speaker, educator, and mental health advocate. She is the author of 2 books, Working Out of the Box and Chemical Khichdi. A very warm welcome to you, Aparna. We are excited to hear from you today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Next, we have with us Ambrish Sinha, founding CEO of UNext Learning, an edtech company focused on the higher education space. Ambrish comes with a wealth of an experience of over 20 years, performing multiple leadership roles across a gamut of industries, including BFSI, automobiles, and online assessment. It's wonderful to have you with us today, Ambrish. Look forward to your valuable insights.
Thanks, Sukriti. Happy to be here today with you all.
Lastly, I'd like to welcome Chaitanya Ramalingegowda, co-founder of Wakefit. Chaitanya, in his dynamic journey of more than 19 years, has played strategic and management roles across multiple organizations. He has also been a serial entrepreneur and an angel investor, investing his professional expertise and acumen in various startups. Welcome to the panel, Chaitanya. We are so glad to have you with us and look forward to hearing you.
Thanks for having me, Sukriti. Looking forward to the learning myself.
I would request our attendees to submit their questions in the Q&A box. Our panelists will answer those towards the end of the session. Thank you. So without further ado, let's begin the session. Over to you, Amit.
Thanks, Sukriti, and welcome to all the panelists. So as we head towards 2023, first time in our history, we will have 5 generations working side by side. As Sukriti said, traditionalists are ones born between 25 to 45, baby boomers between 46 to 64, Gen X's between 65 and 80, and Gen Y millennials between 81 and 2000, and Gen Z's, the most recent generation, between 2001 and 2020. By 2030, Gen Z will occupy almost 1/3 of the workforce. But at the same time, with the baby boomers' life expectancy increasing, reskilling happening, we will still have some of the younger ones in the workforce. In this scenario, it becomes even more imperative that ever for the organizations globally to embrace the convergence of the 5 generations in the workplace and think of revolutions in workplace design, culture, work models, and that keep these cohorts engaged and drive them unprecedented innovations by power of collaboration, all 5 generations put together. So starting with our first area we wanted to explore was around the workforce and its impact on workplace design. So according to a recent UN report, India's population currently at 1.34 billion will by 2030 be 1.5 and will grow to 1.66 by 2050. More significantly, India will have one of the youngest populations, working populations anywhere in the world between the age group of 15 and 59. Half of India's population is already below the age of 25 years. According to a health ministry report, the proportion of working age population in India is expected to grow from 61% in 2011 to about 65% currently. So clearly the working population is growing. So my first question is to Aparna. Aparna, we are seeing a younger cohort of workers rapidly entering the workforce. even as older generations are expanding their employability as a result of, life expectancy, emphasis on reskilling. So what are some of the key elements that define office spaces today? And has corporate India started taking into consideration the changing composition of the workforce in the workplace design? And if so, in what ways?
Hi, Amit. Thanks for that. Yeah, I mean, it's really an interesting phenomenon. And, I've been writing and studying workplaces for about 2 decades, and I've been to so many types of offices, including your own, over the years. We have, when it comes to different demographics, I think we have the stereotype that the older people want privacy, and they have this, they want the corner office, which is closed off. They want a cabin. They want those kind of spaces. And when you think of the younger generations, the needs are much more of having a lively, energetic workspace where there's a really good vibe, and we often think of all the frills like the bean bags and the foosball tables and those kind of elements in the space. So I think this is the imagery that comes to mind when we think of the different generations. And I'm not denying that there's some truth to that. I think that I go to a lot of young offices and they have these kind of, features to them. And most of the CEOs that I interview still have a private cabin of their own, and they very much enjoy that space. But I think from the research that I've done is I'm quite intrigued by the work of Jeremy Myerson, who is an expert in of aging populations and workforces and the office space. And he likes to look at spaces in terms of 3 types of spaces, which is the concentrate spaces, where there's space for people to work solo and people can concentrate, and spaces which are collaborative, which I think we all understand, where they're meeting spaces which might be formal, informal, different kinds of setups for meetings. And then the third type, which often gets overlooked, which is the contemplation workspace, where you can actually take a break from work, maybe rest your eyes a bit, not be on the screen, think about things a little bit, have space to reflect. It could be near nature, near sunlight, a more comfortable space, which is less likely to be found. And I think the conclusion that I would really like to draw is that definitely, younger people look for collaboration, but a lot of younger people also want privacy, because now we are looking for, phone calls, Zoom calls, time that individuals need for privacy also. So, so younger people also need privacy is one point. And I think second, all types of collaboration needs to be factored in. Team meetings can be very large also. So I think, having a variety of team meeting rooms is something that even the older population would want. So one should not just stereotype based necessarily only on the demographics. One should look at the needs of the organization and the workflow, and also provide flexibility between these different styles of working, between concentrating, collaborating, and then also, yes, contemplation, which is something that you would assume that an older cohort would want, but I think even a younger generation would benefit from that. So I think for my mind, what I would really advocate for is really having the flexibility of different types of spaces. They may be used more or less by one cohort or the other, but by really providing that option. And of course, we can factor in things like COVID and all. I'm sure we'll talk about that as we go on.
Thank you, Aparna. I think the collab, concentration, contemplation, I think is a great way of kind of categorizing the workspaces. So Chaitanya, for a company that somewhat operates in a traditional space, was focused on finding innovative ways to gain access and market share. How important is it for you to have a diverse set of employees in different age brackets in today's time?
Amit, it's very, very interesting points that Aparna brought up, and the statistics that you yourself quoted. I think 2-3 points come to my mind. As a company with about 1,600 employees spread across 23 cities, which includes offices, warehouses, and factories, we end up having very diverse set of skill sets, very diverse set of age groups, and very diverse set of requirements from what they seek from a workplace. In many cases, like Aparna mentioned, it's about contemplation, it's about reflection, it's about collaboration. In many cases, it's about just putting your head down and getting some numbers-driven activity like a customer care or or where almost everything is pretty much measurable or quantifiable. And then the other hand, you have a marketing and branding team, which probably would want a lot more collaboration from what I've seen. They like brainstorming ideas. They like throwing around a lot of ideas around before one of the viral campaigns are picked up, and so on and so forth. So given our requirements, given our departments, given our geographic spread, having a very diverse set of people and ensuring that we bring the best out of them through the workspace is something we definitely put a lot of our efforts in. Um, like Aparna mentioned about stereotypes based on age, I would like to also mention stereotypes based on the extroversion introversion scale. So if you read this brilliant book by Susan Cain called Quiet, there's a spectrum. On the one end of the spectrum is deep introversion. On the other end of the spectrum is deep extroversion. And people who are who vary between the extroversion and introversion depending on the scenario are called ambiverts. So there's extroverts, ambiverts, and introverts. So in such a scenario where 50% of the workforce is introverts, 50% is extroverts on average, but everybody is forced to use an open plan office. Why should they be forced to do that? When 50% of the workforce, which is introverts, don't perform well in that. Similarly, take all extroverts and put them all in cabins or private spaces. They won't do well. They derive their energy, they derive their ideas, they derive their whole processing capability by interacting with people. That's how they get their mojo, so to speak. So given this kind of situation and our own diverse team requirements, age requirements, as well as this extroversion, introversion thing, we've tried to have a mix of different environments to bring out the best in them. But if I would honestly say that if these kinds of diverse capabilities, diverse age groups aren't there, we wouldn't be half the company that we are today.
Super. Thank you. Thank you, Chaitanya. All great points there. So Ambrish, as a startup which is in the edtech space, has grown significantly, caters to a younger crowd. How much of your workplace designs are influenced by the people you employ or the age groups that you employ? And what are some of the areas you consider when it comes to general traits and preferences of a particular age group while setting up your office? Ambrish, you're on mute.
Happens all the time. So, no, I think very pertinent points made by Aparna and Chaitanya. I think I resonate with their thoughts on this way the space, Aparna rightly said, concentrate, collab, and contemplate. And ambiverts is a very interesting point that Chaitanya brought. I learned something today. So for us as a startup in the last 2 years, of course, we are in a way pandemic-born company, so to say, because we started UNext and within 6 months, the pandemic hit us. So it has been quite an interesting journey for us, and workspace has been a criteria for us to get people back to offices because as a young company, we need to collaborate a lot more because people need to get to know each other. So that was one thing. And in the learning tech space, or edtech, I think is an oft abused word these days. So for us, what it has been is that, to my mind, see, work from home and learn from home are two trends which resonated with everyone during the pandemic. And as people last year, we were all coming back to work. For us at UNext, it was very important that people feel happy coming back. At one end, I'm propagating learning from home. And at the other end, there are employees who are coming together to work in office. So it was a constant conflict to resolve. So I would also agree with Chaitanya and Aparna that we have not constructed our workspace around demographic as much, but as much more around the functionality of things. So like a classic case for us is a content is a very big, important metric for our company. Marketing is another one. Content assessment, how do you judge the performance of the learners? These required some kind of closed or spaces where confidentiality, etc., needs to be maintained, So our workspace has been designed more based on the functionality and the requirements of the team rather than that. And second is, yes, I think coming to work has to be fun. I very strongly believe in that. So irrespective of the age of our people, I think the office should be a fun place for people to come together after being stuck at home for to 2.5 years almost. So that was another big thought for us when we build our office space, especially in Bangalore. And last point that I would like to address is that in the workforce of the future, of course, hybrid is the way to go. Other thing also is that people, irrespective of age groups or demographic, whether they are Gen Z or millennials, that's the typical profile that we have. There are places that they need to work alone, and privacy is very important. I think Chaitanya or Aparna mentioned it. So that is something also very critical, and therefore our workspace is built around that. So yeah, so pretty interesting times, but yes.
No, so I think everybody is resonating around this whole dimension of not just demographics, but functionality kind of ruling the desire for the kind of workspace. And then obviously what I'm hearing is that there has to be multiple optionality available depending on the function, depending on the job function, etc. So I think clearly that resonates well, and I think that's how we are seeing also trends in the marketplace. So moving on to the next kind of idea we wanted to explore was kind of the importance and challenges in catering to the needs of the various generations, right? As we are seeing in our audience poll, 77% is saying that yes, generational differences in the workspace have to be accommodated. So which is kind of resonating with what we are discussing. So as an article by Forbes, by 2025, millennials will make almost 50%, almost 33% of the global workforce. And many of them will be in the leadership positions, right? So the rise of the millennial employees into leadership roles and the entrance of Gen Z in a meaningful way into the workforce are going to be the two biggest contributors to the change in traditional approaches to leadership, learning, workplace culture. So as we see with these different generations coming into how they would like to engage, each having their own defining characteristics and values and attitudes to work, I think we will see a change in approach in workspaces being driven by these leadership positions being taken by the millennials and the Gen Z. So Aparna, how important is it in today's world that needs of all the generations are satisfied in the same office space? What has changed over the years? And what are some of the benefits and the challenges that you see companies are coping with at this moment? Aparna, you're on mute.
Interesting point that you talked about, even the millennials coming into leadership positions. So I saw an office which had a lot of cabins for the senior partners. This was a large consulting firm based in India only. And what was interesting, though, that because people travel so much, that each of those partners' offices was equipped with a meeting table that anyone could use when those people were not there. So that to me is a real sign of how leadership is changing the older generation. I mean, I'm not saying everybody who was a partner in that firm was very old necessarily, but they were, they were definitely older than the Gen Zs. But they were okay with having, let's say, the Gen Zs or the younger people share their space. So this kind of agility in the office, I think the recognition that the office is going to be shared by a number of people and needs to be agile was, I think, a very promising and encouraging recognition. That's one. Second, of course, is the role of technology. I mean, I think that having younger people in the organization always makes an organization much more tech savvy, giving a lot more features, lots more different places to interact with technology. So I think that that is something obviously that can bring both generations together also, right? And this is where the younger generations can also mentor the older generations. And I think one of the things also I've learned personally in my life, how important it is to have person in your life who's a millennial or a Gen Z mentoring you. And I think if we can see that kind of mentorship happening in offices, and maybe through the use of, let's say, technology, I think that's a very beneficial way that these demographics can interact with each other. And then again, I said, I think it's important to find ways to give people who are not in senior positions, give them privacy options. Because, in this post-pandemic world, I think there was a question on the chat also that somebody said, how is this all going to work with remote working? I mean, we are coming into the office, but we are doing calls in the office remotely also. We need privacy. I think that is something that even though people are coming in to collaborate and to meet, privacy is required for different meetings. So accounting for that, I think going forward through these initiatives will also make a difference, I feel.
I think obviously, suffices to say there is a generational challenge now, there is a distributed work hybrid challenge. You need to accommodate all of those aspects going together. And on top of it, technology, real estate, and headcount are kind of gotten decoupled over the last 2 years, right? So traditional way of thinking is dramatically changing. So Ambrish, as a tech-based startup, right? I mean, as you said, you are propagating online learning, right? I mean, that's at the core of what UNext does. How relevant is it for you to create a workspace that reflects diversity in terms of demographics of your employees? How much does that weigh in your company culture? And what, according to you, are some of the challenges that you face while you're trying to manage these multi-generations in your company?
So it's been very, as I said, it's been interesting and challenging for us because we are focused more on the higher education segment. So we have a large population of academicians, so to say, who work with us. And of course, they are slightly older compared to some of our tech folks, and EdTech, as the word says, education and technology. It's both layers have to come together. So yes, it's been, so what we have done is what Aparna alluded to in our office. It was always the plan for me that we should have a lot of meeting rooms and a lot of spaces where anybody could use. So that breaks the shackles of, the grade or the hierarchy. We have tried to be a very flat organization, but yes, those aspirations still needs to be met. So a lot of meeting rooms have helped us break this silos between different age groups and different functions. So everybody can use those meeting rooms. Second thing also has been on the diversity side, we have been very focused, and all our workspaces are such that everybody can walk in, walk out. If somebody has some mobility issues or any other things, we have been very conscious of that fact because that I think has helped us attract a lot of good talent also, so the workspace has been built around that. And the other thing is cultivate a spirit of collaboration and enhance productivity at the same time. So small things like all our meeting rooms have like MS Teams rooms or Zoom rooms activated at any point of time. So if somebody is not in the office and is taking the meeting from home, he or she doesn't feel left out, because in hybrids workspace, to my mind, a big challenge I see that, although we try to sometimes not discuss it, but is that people miss out that if they are not in office and the other colleagues are not office, will it impact my performance, because I'm not there face to face. And that takes a lot of effort in culture building to assuage those concerns. So one thing that we have tried to do, at least I would say with moderate success, if not 100%, is that we don't let anybody feel if he or she is not coming to office today and others are in, they are missing out on anything. Yes, there are one or two instances where some challenges do exist. So I think that's the way we have been able to manage both the generational dynamics in office as well as the different people on the functional side. So that's what has helped us, I would say, in the last 2 years, especially.
Yeah, super, Ambrish. So Chaitanya, I think moving along, I think some very interesting thoughts both from Aparna and Ambrish on how it's being managed in workspaces. So as a company which is rapidly expanding and growing, what are some of the challenges that you encounter in fulfilling the needs of different generations, right? And what are some of the ways that you have incorporated while creating those office spaces?
So the way we think about office space or any space for collaboration is, does it fulfill two things? Point number one is bringing out the best in you, which we alluded to in the first point, based on age, based on interests, based on mental health situation that you are in at that point in time, based on introversion, extroversion scale, based on gender preferences maybe. Can you bring the best out of them by providing different types of workspaces? That is number one. Point number two is, can you also enable them to express themselves? Just look at this own call where Amit has a painting behind him. Aparna has books and a Taj Mahal miniature sculpture behind her. So you're expressing yourselves. I am outside at a cafe, I told you, but all of you in some form or the other are expressing yourself, saying that this is who I am. And if you come to my cabin, you'll see all superhero figurines, Yoda, because I'm a big believer that people, the only thing holding back people from unleashing their superhuman capabilities are themselves. So I believe in that. So I want to express everything through that philosophy. So when you look at that, those are the two big things. One is, can you bring the best out of people? Second is, can you express yourself in safely, without judgment, and fully freely? Amit, when you started, you mentioned that there's clear 3 or 4 generations, right? That is baby boomers, millennials, Gen Zs. Now they're talking about Gen Alphas. But I will say something slightly different here. I think the reality is not as structured as academics make you believe. I believe that the generation gap has now shrunk to 2 or 3 years. You talk to somebody who's graduated in 2022, and you talk to somebody who's graduated in 2019. The way they use their smartphones, the apps they use, who they chat with, how they interact with people, everything is a completely different thing. It's almost like a different world altogether. So if you take a slightly more broader definition of a generation gap, meaning that people interacting with the world differently and wanting different things from the world, you will see that it's very, very different in just a 3-year age gap. So I feel that given these two things about uh, how we define our workspaces is exactly just this. Okay? Whether it's an intern that is a fresh graduate, whether it is a gig worker, whether it is somebody who's in the last year of college and doing a practice school with us, or somebody who's a lateral experienced person but wanting to take a career break and has come in for a 6-month project with us. They should all find ways to be the best and express themselves. And once I know many of you might have done different initiatives to bring this out. One small thing that I remembered is that we did something called the right to nap policy, because we as Wakefit, we started off as a sleep company. Now currently we are a complete home solutions company, which means everything from sofas, wardrobes, recliners to everything else. So because our genesis was in sleep, and when people came back to the workforce, come back to office after the pandemic, we realized that the small micro breaks that they were getting, or the time to rest themselves, give their eyes a break, recenter themselves, just take a deep breath, that was not possible anymore when they came back to work in the office. So we, about 6-7 months ago, we launched this policy saying that there is a right to nap policy. 2 to 2:30 p.m. every single day, our HR has blocked out every one of the 1,600 employees' calendars, saying that official nap time. It's literally called official nap time, and it comes from our HR head. And that means that during that time, people can do what they want to do. Nobody else can set up a meeting during that time. And we thought people would take a break or just go for a smoke break or chai, but we figured out they do very different things. They go to the window and just sit on the recliner and chat with friends. Some of them just want to meditate. Some of them just want to do some breathing exercises. Some of them just want to listen to music. So the things that they have done are things that we had not even imagined that they would do. So this has been a very eye-opening policy for us.
So Chaitanya, that's very, very interesting. I think the right to nap is a unique idea. I've never heard of it, but I think it goes in line with what Aparna was saying earlier on the contemplation of the space, right? I mean, that's important, where people can take a break, take rest, whatever they want to do. As you said, different flavors for different generations. The second point, which was very interesting, was this whole idea that the generations are not just 5, right? There are many more layers already built in, right? 3-year generation gap means it could be 15 generations coexisting. So I think it's important to kind of calibrate, bringing that piece on. And Chaitanya, on my background, this was the only spot available in all the centers, so I had no choice but to with the painting in the back. So moving along, I think clearly, as we see, some of these changing demographics, right, are reshaping the office or the workspace market, right? As I said, I think I was at a real estate conference yesterday, and clearly the developer community has a different view. The occupier community has a different view. The employee itself has a different view, right? And all three have different views on where this is all going to shape up, right? So clearly, I think it's time that, companies recognize that office space as a strategic tool for business growth, right? For leaders today, the big question is, how do we create a work environment that is evolved for generationally diverse mix of workers, addresses their varying wants and needs when it comes to communication, style, adaptation to change, design sensibilities and technology friendliness to ensure a thriving coexistence, right? And I think at the core of all of it, and clearly, I just mentioned it earlier to Chaitanya also, before we started the webinar, is that, in Bangalore, if you're going to ask somebody to travel 2 to 3 hours each way to come to a workspace, it better be worth it, right? Otherwise, you can't force people to come, and, people are going to make that choice where they're going to say, sorry, but I'm not going to be traveling that much time. I'll look for an alternate, opportunity. But at the same time, I think what we're also hearing is that collaboration is important. Some of the brainstorming, some of the onboarding of new employees, it requires a physical connect. And I think that nobody's debating that aspect of it, right? But at the same time, choice, flexibility, including, within office, the ability to choose a time where you can do whatever you want, I think is important. So Ambrish, my question to you along the similar kind of lines is, how do you see the future of office space panning out? And what are some of the new concepts design that you think you would like to see from office space providers, flex space providers, which you think should be included as part of, the package of going into a real estate asset or going into a workspace?
So I think, Amit, I think the future of workspace, and I think all of us have discussed a little bit of this today. I think hybrid is the way to go, where people have the flexibility, because I'm of my experiences, and in our company and in the past also, what I have seen is that some kind of element of people coming into office helps them, because everybody might not have the same facilities available at home for their achieving 100% of their potential while working from home. So the workspace of future will be hybrid in nature. I think the second thing that we are looking forward, and since we've just done about a year back or 9 months back, 6 months back, our office space. So some of these ideas we have tried to incorporate. One thing that has helped us, or our employee feedback has been, and a lot of our colleagues have commented, is that the workplace should be exciting and vibrant. I think gone are the days when people would just come to an office, or everything is plain vanilla. I think people have, people like you at Office as well as WeWork have really transformed the way people look at offices, credit where it's due. And I think that has really resonated with employees and workforce of whichever generation it is. In fact, the older folks enjoy the workspace more if it is new and vibrant. They feel connected to today's times. Second thing is that the workspace should be flexible, and it should be like a flowing workspace in which people don't feel disengaged. Like I said, whether you're working from home or not working from home, because different people still think differently. This whole thing about like the way that recently we all saw Elon Musk calling every back to work, and there was a lot of chatter on the net and Twitter all over the place. So I think different leaders have different style, different companies have different cultures. There is no one straight jacket that fits all. So I think the fluid workspaces is what I see as the future of work. And last point is that I think people should have design and a little bit of, like making the places look more appealing, aesthetic wise. Like now, since Chaitanya commented, you both have paintings and he's sitting in a nice place. And mine is, I think my painting is due from Amit himself. So yeah, places should reflect the individuality of the people that are there. And I think that is something that's a great point. And we try to do that. We have asked people to paint their, whatever the cabins that they use regularly, put out stuff out there, make it little according to themselves. So I think in a nutshell, what I feel is that the workplace should be a fun place, and it should be little centrally located. I have always have little bias towards that, where you have different multimodal connectivity of transport, because sometimes companies, the leadership that is deciding tend to take a biased decision of where they live or the people that they think come to office more regularly. So I think where the multimodal transport system in a place like Bangalore, which is like famous for or infamous for its traffic, I think connectivity to multimodal transport should be one more factor that we should look at while building office spaces for the future. So yeah, these are some of the things that I feel should help all of us.
Superb, Ambrish. Thank you so much for those insights. Chaitanya, so for your company, how important is it to invest in having work culture and space that ensures a productive coexistence across all generations for your future growth?
We are a 7-year-old company, so all of these are extremely important. And we both, Ankit and I, believe that culture is not something that you set up after you fixed your business problems. I guess you fix the culture as you go along every day. In your own small broken way, you keep fixing every day. And that cumulative outcome itself becomes the culture. So we have very broad rituals. We first of all, we put up some very broad guardrails saying that as long as you have this few hours of working day where everybody is available to facilitate collaboration, you're most welcome to come to office or not come to office. And we gave that freedom to different teams. So some teams chose to come into office 1 day a week, some chose to come in 6 days a week. It's up to them and the cadence that they want, the speed that they want. And we created rituals around it. For example, tech team has everyday stand-up. Some days they have silent meetings for bug fixing. A marketing team has a weekly marketing huddle where everybody has to talk about one thing that they learned brand new in the last 1 week. Marketing related, non-marketing related, doesn't matter. So from that perspective, we just facilitate the space to be the enabler in this. For example, we really value flexibility because we make our own recliners, bookshelves, and so forth. So you'll see that our office is filled with those. So the only expectation from our developer was that can you please give us a lot more freedom and flexibility to have these non-fixed parts to be as versatile as possible. The second thing is what Steve Jobs famously put it as facilitating serendipity, saying that can you have these just small chai break area near the coffee machine, a small recliner space in front of the window where there's not a lot of natural sunlight. So these are things where people just land up organically during some parts of the day to spend a few minutes, a few hours working, thinking, doing whatever. And the last thing is something that we believe. For example, we have engaged a art collective of trans people to come and paint the Wakefit journey on a mural on our wall. So they're designing that, and it's very important for us because Wakefit means it's a home company. So it means we want every employee to come and feel at home at the workplace. But at the same time, we believe in inclusion. So we didn't want to choose any artist. We chose an art collective made up of trans people. So small things like this, which shows that we are not just a place where you go in, do your work, generate some revenue and profits and get out. That's very transactional in nature. Where do you build a bond? Not just between team members, but also between the team member and the company. Because that is where you transcend the transactional border of saying that I'm coming for this money, I'm doing my 9 to 5 and getting out. So when you do these kinds of small initiatives, we feel that we're just staying true to our DNA, and hopefully people who walk in every day through those doors pick up the same a little bit and become part of the Wakefit journey.
Superb, Chaitanya. Thank you. So Aparna, what are some of the new trends and concepts that may emerge in the future because of the changing workforce dynamics? And what are some of the areas that companies could look into to ensure that all generations kind of exist in harmonious ways? What are the new trends that you're seeing? What are some of the new thinking that companies are putting out there for this to coexist?
Yeah, before that, I'd just like to say, Chaitanya, what amazing stories. I think that I need to knock on your door and find out more, about right from the rituals to the nap to the superheroes. That looks like a column that's waiting to be written. So But about what's there in future, I think I've also been writing about mental health, as you know, and I think that this is one area, Chaitanya also referred to it, that is a big area for workplaces. I think it's the next frontier that really needs to be explored and developed. And when I think of mental health, I mean, really, I'm thinking of mental and emotional well-being. And this is an area actually where I feel there's a big disconnect between the generations. And I think, in fact, this is one area where the each generation really differs, because what we have is we have sort of three broad cohorts, which is the oldest generation who have never really discussed their emotions, and certainly they've never discussed their emotions at work. And then they are also a bit skeptical perhaps of the younger lot who do that. Maybe then people like us who are more open to it but who are not as open as the youngsters, and then the younger ones who very casually sometimes use terms like I have a ADHD, or I'm bipolar, or I have OCD, or they use these words almost casually, and for whom mental health is a much more open. They're open to going to therapists. They're talking about all of their feelings. So I think that this is an important aspect, because we spend such a big part of our life at work, and work can also be such a big stressor and a trigger for our mental well-being. And it's something that I think organizations are just struggling to grapple with. And I think that if we can think about mental well-being at work, we can tackle so many other things through that, right? I mean, we can think about just the overall productivity, efficiency, comfort, many different aspects of not just, I mean, human satisfaction and fulfillment, but also economic. So if you can make workplaces that are more, suited for well-being through these, as we talked about, these spaces for contemplation and collaboration and concentration, and finding that right balance, finding technology, finding places that are agile and responsive, so that's one thing. I just to give you an example, on World Mental Health Day, I gave CEOs a message, a 1-minute message of what they could talk about in terms of how they could talk about mental health in the workplace. And I got a tremendous response from them, suggesting that many of them did not actually know how to talk about it, and they were quite grateful for the input. They were open to it. So I just think that this is a subject that has a lot. And I also think when we think about the future workplace, demographics is one criteria, but there are other aspects of inclusivity also, which I think, Chaitanya, you also talked about, right? So whether it is gender, whether it is disability, I mean, in looking at over 200 offices, I think I only came across one or two really that were really accessible, from let's say for wheelchair accessible, and and actually employed people that had disabilities and went out of the way to employ them and to make them comfortable. So I think having people with disabilities in the office, and making it accessible and accommodating them is another frontier that we should see much more of. So I think that we have come a long way, and it'll be interesting to see what will get us to think in this way. Just like COVID forced us to go digital and forced us to embrace technology and forced us to think about remote working and hybrid working, which we just could not have imagined. It'll be interesting for me to see what would actually fundamentally make us a more inclusive workplace.
Superb, Aparna. Thank you so much to all the panelists for their great views. We have a whole bunch of questions from our audience. So I don't know if you have time for covering all of them, but we'll certainly try to, take some of them. So Sukriti, you want to run the Q&A or?
Yes. Samad, we've received some very interesting questions today, and we'll just pick up a few of them to address in the session. So the first one is, the rate at which the workplace needs change is expected to increase with time. How can organizations of all scales make themselves future ready at every step? So Ambrish, Chaitanya, would you like to answer that one?
I think future ready, future proof are all euphemisms to say that can you be resilient despite whatever happens. I think workplace is no longer a place a physical structure where you come in. I think it's a place where you feel comfortable. It's a place where you can become the best version of yourself professionally and personally, and bring the whole element of yourself to work. Otherwise, it's not a good place. You're not doing justice to who you are as a person. So if you do that, I think any tough situation the company can face. For example, during the pandemic, we took the hard call of saying we'll not let go of anybody, no matter what. And when the pandemic unlock happened and everybody went crazy with offers and increments and so forth, we did not lose people the same way that other companies lost. So I think it's a combination of the workplace and what the workplace stands for. The only way that you can be future-proof.
Great. Thank you so much, Chaitanya, for answering that. Ambrish, would you like to add anything to that?
Yeah, I think I agree with what Chaitanya said. The future-proofing your workspace is basically making the employee achieve their life goals, not only the company goals, but their life goals. And if we can do that at our organization or any organization, I think that's the best way to retain talent or groom talent. And second is that we should not only look at like employees' contribution to the company, but what company is doing for the employee also. How do you increase their employability, help them with their life goals? I think the workspace should help them achieve those things. And then I think that's the best way to future-proof your work.
Thank you. We'll move on to the next question. What are some of the emerging needs observed among the modern workforce that challenge the workplace norms currently, followed by the older workforce? Aparna, would you like to take a stab at it?
Yeah, I think what I've seen is that the younger generation may not necessarily like to stay in one place for a long time. So I think, the older generations were pretty used to having an assigned seat and staying in that space, meeting people in that space, and being quite territorial in general. Whereas the younger generations, I think, physically like to move from one place to the other. So a lot of offices that you now see will have that feature. They allow people to work in 5 different locations in one day, especially the larger offices. With the smaller offices, that might be harder. But with the larger offices, having that flexibility of movement, I think, is definitely one trend that I see.
Thank you, Aparna, for answering that. Amit, we have this one for you. The demands of the modern workforce will keep changing with time, as it has always been. With flex spaces emerging as the new go-to workplace strategy, how can it cater to shifting workforce needs in the long run?
So, Sukriti, flexibility is at the core of flex and co-working, right? So I think the ability to be nimble and ability to move with the times, ability of delivering with speed, with efficiency, something that works. So, I mean, we almost look at ourselves as retail, right? I mean, as customer behavior needs changes, you have to change the menu, right? At the end of the day, if in India, McDonald's has to sell a paneer burger, it has to sell a paneer burger, right? I mean, it can't only try to sell what it sells globally. So I think for us, and at least at Awfis, I can say that for our business is that it's important to be nimble. It's important to be fast. It's important to be efficient and evolve with the times. And that's the only way a flex or a co-working business can remain relevant. And you have to hear your customers, right? And what they want and how you can satisfy those requirements within the confines of the workspaces that we provide.
Thank you. Now, the next question is, what are some collaborative interventions besides workspace design that leaders can implement to build a more cohesive team? Chaitanya, I think you also explained that quite a bit during the session, but would you just like to summarize that for our attendees?
At best, I would be able to say that this is what has worked for us, and hopefully different companies can find different things. I think for us, it has been that can you create very broad guardrails saying that these 4 hours in a day or these 5 hours in a day try and be available because it enables collaboration. But beyond that, we only have rituals. Can we have different rituals for different teams as per their needs and as per their nature of work? And the third thing is also how they choose to come to office and what they choose to come to office for is again a team level decision that the department head can directly take independently. So that's how we have sort of enabled a cohesive experience. And on top of it, we do the usual thing where many of our employees choose to some days just go and say that, hey, I'm working today, but I'm working out of Blue Tokai Coffee a shop, or I'm just working out of Yogistan Cafe in Indranagar. So it's fine. Some days you need that different space to sort of bring out different aspects of your creativity. So be it. So that kind of trust-based decisions where they're saying they're working and they're available. That's all. We are not going to question whether we. Basically, I'm trying to say that we don't own the employee's time. We own their work product. So that means whatever is going to enable them to be the best, that is what is going to be trusted and followed.
Thank you. We'll just take one last question for today. Have you seen organizations make any significant changes to policies to cater to Gen Z? I'll just request our panelists to, share their insights on this.
I think organizations have entirely invested in new offices to make them funky to cater to Gen Z. And, they've introduced all these, running tracks and themed meeting rooms and what else there is. So they're making huge capital investments to attract and retain and recruit a young workforce. That's what I've seen for sure.
I think two policies I want to talk about. One is the right to nap. I told you, we realized that different people needed that half an hour in the day. So we give them complete freedom to do what they want. The second one is what we released just recently, about a month ago. Completely no questions asked wellness leave policy. So we realized that people, although had certain reasons, were hesitating to go to their manager because they would have to enter that column in the leave management system saying, why are you taking leave? That one line they had to enter, they were hesitant because of that. So we said, okay, there is going to be specific leaves that are going to be given X number of days per year. But that is no questions asked. So your manager, your boss, your founder, whoever, nobody can question why you're taking that. So it was a very simple thing that came out through listening to our employees through a employee pulse survey. So despite all of the talking, we realized that they had this small hesitancy to say they didn't want to share. It could be for period. It could be for, hey, I'm not feeling off today. It could be because I'm just having cramps today. It could be because I went for a long run yesterday and today I'm feeling tired. Whatever, they didn't have to explain themselves. So that again is something small, but we feel that our team is resonating very well with that.
Ambrish?
For us, the new office, which is designed around some of the feedback we had received from our employees during the pandemic, when we said that what should we do when we return to work? Should we return to work compulsorily or hybrid? So I think one policy that has worked for us that we have a hybrid work policy. You can choose your days that you come in, and then those days are your days that you will be there. So that gives the flexibility and choice to employees. The second thing, which is a very small thing, but that has worked, I don't know if it will attract talent, but has made our existing employees very happy, is the availability of almost unlimited parking space. So that has really helped our people. And when I asked them in our pulse survey that what do you like the most about the new office and what would you like us to do better? Of course, there were points on doing better, but what they liked, of course, was the new design, because it was a mall converted into an office. So you had elevators and everything. And the second was the parking space for their friends and relatives and family. We have a family day thing that we do very regularly. People getting their family to work, because as an ed tech company, learning is all your life. So kids come, their family members come, older people come. So getting them to work to office, to see their workplace where their loved ones work, I think these two things have really helped us in my mind right now.
Well, we have also reached the end of today's session. So Amit, I think we can close today's session.
Sure. So just to wrap, I think great insights, right? I think Aparna, Ambrish, Chaitanya, all similar perspective is different in their own rights. I think clearly, I think Aparna talked about the whole idea of spaces into three categories of collaboration, concentration, and contemplation. Need-based versus purely demographic-based workspace, which I think came out as a theme. Flexibility, agility, technology intervention, and kind of co-location with workspace, I think were a couple of highlights that Aparna brought out. And I think one of the most important aspects, which I truly believe in, I think employee mental health and wellness being at the core of how workspaces evolve in the future, I think is bang on how I think things will shape up. Chaitanya, great insights on introversion, extroversion, but the spaces are kind of always at conflict and not able to service those two behavioral types in all its entirety. So clearly, I think the need for flexibility, need for agility, which Aparna talked about, I think kind of brings into that, and the ability to bring out the best in people and express themselves in a safe environment, I think are a couple of points which are very important. And then, clearly right to nap and, wellness, no questions asked wellness policy are really forward thinking. I think there are very few organizations that I know of that kind of go that extra mile to bring it that kind of level of flexibility or manage some of those generational changes. Ambrish, you spoke about clearly the ability to continue to engage and how the workspace continues to kind of engage you as you go forward, and the ability to not having anybody feel left out, so that even if you are in the office or you're not in the office, you're never feeling that you kind of got left out in any way. And clearly the whole aspect of the fun place, right? I mean, somewhere that people are excited to be at, somewhere where they will travel the extra mile. And I think you and I have spoken about the whole family aspect of it, but I think that's very important that you engage some of the families and give them the ability to bring their families into the workspace. I think are some of the great ideas. So I thoroughly enjoyed the session and learned from it, and I hope our participants did as well. So thank you to Aparna, Ambrish, and Chaitanya for this extremely open and candid chat and learnings that we got out of it. So thank you so much. And thank you to all the participants to make this a success.